Hello, and thank you for joining us in the next installment of the EMA Webinar series. These webinars are your introduction to the fast-track training powered by the Hubbard Management System. Now, if you're watching this, I don't have to tell you, you have your hands on the most powerful management technology on earth. But, you're probably using some elements of it, and the truth is the results you get really depend on how well you know it, which depends on how well you learned it, which depends on how well you studied it, which breaks down into both its theory and application. Every 2 weeks, we are lucky enough to interview some of the most stellar names and whys to find out how they did exactly that. How did they take that theory and apply it to become the stellar names that they are? But this week, we've got an extra special surprise for you. We've got Mr. Quentin Strube, who is CEO Wise East US, and we're going to be talking about how to raise your income without really trying, which is definitely something we're all excited to. Quentin Strube, how are you, sir?
Good. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back. The last webinar we did was the most watched webinar of all time, and so we're so excited to have you back on. Before we get into the whole concept of money, this weekend I got to watch LRH's birthday event and the release of the SMP, right, the Scientology media production. And you've been around for a while, Quinn. I just wanted to get what was your viewpoint when you saw that? I know for me it was quite emotional to actually see that we had come so far, that we had our own media station. But what's your thoughts on that, sir?
Well, I mean, you took the word I would have used, which is emotional. I've been a Scientologist since 1978. And when I first went to my org, the sign was a piece of Dymo tape. I don't even think a lot of the listeners know what Dymo tape is. But anyway, it was how we used to label stuff over a buzzer. And I pushed a buzzer. I was let into the building. I walked up 2 flights of stairs, had to cross through the fire escape.
Wow.
That was our org, and I think about Scientology today. And of course, we've gone through a lot. But yeah, no, it's spectacular, to say the least. And Scientology has changed forever. Already, I mean, where the feedback we're getting, the statistics of new public into our orgs in the Eastern United States was something like double highest ever in our first week. I mean, it wasn't even a full week. Number of raw books sold was in screaming affluence. So a lot of incredible things. And so, I mean, it's a wonderful thing to spectate, Dan. I don't know what your next question is going to be, but I'm going to take the opportunity to say something here about it. I think that, it's so awe-inspiring to watch the release, particularly as Mr. Miscavige announced it and so forth. And I think, huge applause for all the accomplishments. And I think it's a pass on everybody observing the incredible magnitude of what's happened. I think that people were sort of awestruck, as is appropriate. But I think it's also a time for Scientologists to honestly reflect, particularly wise members, on the future and what this has to do with them. There's a lot of things that individuals could speculate on with regards to how life would be different for them post the Scientology network, the launch of the Scientology network versus pre the launch of the Scientology network. But one thing I think every Scientologist and every wise member has to be thinking with at this moment is that they are now, their friends, their family, their associates are now able to observe the truth about Dianetics and Scientology. And when they look at these, and of course, it goes without saying that all these individuals should be directed to the Scientology channel to answer their questions. But it's all, and I would expect that most Scientologists and wise members will do that. But as it applies to them, you have to imagine that your friends and associates will be watching this incredible channel, these incredible stories of Scientologists, the heroism, the successes, the wins and the losses, but the ultimate wins from Dianetics and Scientology. And then their friends and associates are now going to look back at them. And I think it's a really important time for all of us to now take full responsibility for the application of LRH technology in our lives and set a true example for everybody, because everybody's going to be watching us. If there was ever a call to every WISE member to be a model of admin know-how, I think this release would be such a call, because now the public at large have a datum of comparable magnitude. They have something they can look at and compare to you. And I've said this to WISE members, as long as I've been, the CO. It's like, hey, if you don't want to be a howling success for your own benefit, do it for the benefit of the movement, because, you are that example. You are the demonstration. Of all the things I might train somebody on, and with regards to dissemination, the most important thing I could train them on is to set a good example themselves. And so, and now I think it's more important than ever. So I would hope that the minimal perception on the part of the members who are watching this incredible event and watching this incredible release is like, oh my gosh, I better get it together. Wow. So I can measure up, to what's being portrayed on the Scientology Network channel. And not only that, I need their stories. We need their stories. We're running 24/7. And so those who are watching, who are stellar successes or accomplish stellar success in the next few months or year or what have you, let me know, because we're always looking for stories. I mentioned it to you, Dan, that I think your extraordinary success should be represented on the channel, not just as a doctor, but also as a disseminator and as a creative, very, very creative person, as an author, as an opinion leader. So you should definitely be featured, I believe, and I've already submitted a note to Scientology Media Production to look into your story, because it's an incredible one. But everybody who's watching, your story should be just as incredible. And I would hope that I will get a flood of originations from you that, hey, I have a story, I think it's worth telling. Let me know, and I will pass it along, because that stories are in demand. And even without the stories, just as I said in the beginning of the conversation, like, just use this motion. When emotion comes in, as per the Dianetics jingles from Mr. Hubbard, when emotion comes in, use it and win. If emotion you won't use, you will lose. Use this motion to achieve stellar success for yourselves. I think that is one minimal thing I would hope that every WISE member takes away from this incredible event and release and change in our history.
Quinn, it's funny. The reason I love talking to you so much, even just on a personal level, is I always get so much out of it, because you're so well trained in this tech. I actually thought you were going to talk a little bit emotionally about how you saw the event, and yet what you just said was so powerful and so much what I've believed, right? I mean, there's a response, KRC. You have this knowledge from Mr. Hubbard. You have the responsibility, and you need to actually communicate it, and you can do that by setting an example. And I think it's something you represent. So many in the Sea Org represented. So many Scientologists I've met have done it, and so many WISE members have done it. And I do think that we all need to sort of take the game to the next level and get excited about it, right? I mean, what I loved is when Mr. Miscavige was talking about LRH had been he was reading a reference on conceiving of planetary clearing, right? Like, right. You have to think. I don't want to paraphrase it, but it was basically like we're not necessarily even able to conceive of what it would take. And at the end, right? And then at the end, he releases SMP, and he said, "Conception done," right? And it was like, wow. Yeah. And the other thing he said is, it's a news channel that is actually giving theta.
Yeah.
You watch the other news channels, and it's all in theta. And he said, and we're dropping a theta sort of nuclear explosion on the world. That, to me, those two comments blew me. I couldn't even sleep that night because I was just thinking about that, sir.
It is amazing. I mean, I've watched, I don't watch much television, but I'm watching that, and I'm telling you, the theta is unbelievable. I mean, these stories, inspiring is like, doesn't even do it justice, but it's fantastic stuff. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I hope everybody watches it. You know, the guys say, well, I don't have DirecTV, but you know, they have Apple TV. You can download the app on a Google phone or whatever they call them, Androids and Apple phones. There's apps for it. You go to your, anyway, it's so easy. YouTube channel. We've got a YouTube channel. The shows are on there. So there's really dozens and dozens of ways to view the channel. So view it, get your friends to view it, and use it to motivate you to take full and total responsibility for what you have learned and put it into full use. And let's build a better world.
You know, Quinn, I think all of us have seen a certain very fast growth of Scientology, of the Hubbard Management Tech, but I think you also get used to a certain level of growth, and you know, it's sort of going like this, and right now it's about to do this.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think, you know, I think these wise members, it's why we want to talk about how to raise your income without really trying and stuff, because it is important that we get that magnitude, even for ourselves, for our own businesses, our own practices, that it's sort of what you were saying. It's not okay even to just do this, or which is great, better than doing this, but to actually like start to go like that. And that's right. I mean, let's sort of knock off all the agreement with just the condition of normal. Let's get everybody into affluence and power. And sir, in terms of income, let's just jump right in. How do we do that? How do we get everybody into power, sir?
Well, I don't know, but getting people into power and raising income are two different things. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
We're not going to talk about getting into power today because I don't think we'd have enough time, and I have a few things I want to go over. But I told you to use the title, "How to Raise Your Income Without Really Trying." Raising the members' income is the easiest part of my job. You know, I wish everything was as easy as getting people to make more money. It is the easiest part of my job. It's so easy to do that, and I'll cover a couple of things here, but you know, if it was as easy, you know, getting them into power is a little bit of a different story. There's a little bit more to it. Making more money is so darned easy. You know, you really have to try not to.
So explain that to us a little bit, just because I could imagine some people hearing that going, "Oh, no way!" You know, I've been trying for years to raise income. So you know, so go
anybody who's watching this webinar who takes any part of what we're covering and implements it, they're going to get an increase in income.
Wow.
Okay, there's just no way. You know, this is not hard stuff. All right. Well, okay. Well, let's jump into it. There's a very fundamental aspect of this that if you get this, if you have this realization, and I'll tip everybody off when they're supposed to have their realization. Give them all a heads up, because if you have this realization, literally, you will not have difficulties with finance from this point forward. Okay, it's like it is the fundamental. Okay, and I'll go ahead and I'm going to read you the reference, and then I'm going to do a little demonstration on it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, well, actually, before I read this, you have to understand that LRH was an engineer and had a respect for people who had an engineer's viewpoint of truth. The engineer's viewpoint of truth is what works. Okay, it's a very simplistic way of describing it. But if it works, it's true. But it's only true if it works 100% of the time. So the Hubbard Management System is founded on laws and principles that work, that are true, and they are true because they work 100% of the time. If you follow these principles, you will have success. If you don't follow these principles, you will. It's iffy. You know, you could be driving over a bridge that's going to collapse. Okay, engineers don't build. Good engineers don't build bridges on principles that don't work 100% of the time, because people are counting on that bridge to be something they can cross over 100% of the time. Okay, no matter what they're carrying. So there was a gentleman that somewhat of a contemporary of LRH's named Howard Scott, who applied engineering type principles to economics. So he makes reference to Howard Scott in this what I'm about to read you. Okay. LRH says, "It is also called to your attention that according to a one-time disciple of Howard Scott's, money is the attention unit of a social group, and that as much money comes into any part of that social group as it attracts attention. So here's a first principle, okay? I would hope that most of the viewers know what an attention unit is, but if you've ever had a fight with a spouse and gone to work, you will often observe that not all of your attention is on what you're doing. And because a certain amount of attention is still stuck on the situation with the fight at home. So, and you probably have a lousy day. And the reason you're having a lousy day is you're not as competent, you're not as effective. So therefore, attention is a variable quantity, and it can be arbitrarily measured in units. It's a very important thing to understand about attention. So you tend to be as competent and as effective as you have your attention in present time. And Dianetics and Scientology, one of the things it does is helps to bring more and more of your attention into present time. So that's one of the reasons why people become more and more competent and effective through their progress. But also understand that the general public offer you attention units or not. And to the degree that they offer you attention units, you are attracting attention, which he later clarifies as pro-survival attention. Robbing a bank will get you attention, but it is not pro-survival attention. And you will probably not achieve success. But pro-survival attention, attracting pro-survival attention is the secret to attracting income, okay? He goes on to say, your success depends upon the production of an effect. Your finance depends upon attracting interest. Okay. To be successful, you have to produce the effect that you say you're going to produce. So if you're going to say, look, I repair automobiles, well, you better be able to do that. And your success depends on that. If you can't repair automobiles, you're not going to be successful if that's what you're promoting that you do. I mean, this is a simple, very simple thing to say, but strangely enough, sometimes the quality of the production of the effect is not given due regard on the part of the business owner. It should not be neglected. In my early years as a WISE consultant, I always figured, I just took it as an assumption that my client was delivering a good product or service. And it didn't take more than the first month or two of delivery to realize, hey, look at it. If this stuff's not working, I better look into what they're delivering. And sure enough, that would often debug income. So, but your production of an effect, that is what your success depends upon, but not your finance.
Quentin, let me just say one thing. I've also seen the opposite, where I've seen people so focused on the product and so little focus on attention, like getting attention, where they're just like, oh, I'm just going to spend 8 hours with this patient and not market and not promote. So I've seen that, right? I've seen that too, where,
Exactly. So, Mr. Hubbard says your success depends upon the production of an effect. Your finance depends upon attracting interest. How many wonderful healers do you know who are broke? They can produce an effect, but they cannot attract attention. Healers, artists are famous for this. Oh, I don't want to attract attention. All my art's going to sit in my attic. They're not, and they are starving, and they think that that's appropriate, but it's not. Art, it's all about quality of communication. If no one's viewing your art, what kind of an artist are you? So, there has to be this ability or some kind of a program or plan in place to attract attention, or you will have no finance. You can put that one down in an atomic. Now, okay, so now I'm going to give you, now is the time that everybody needs to pay attention, because now is the time I'm going to give you this datum that if you realize it, you won't have problems with finance again. Okay, so be ready to cognite. Hopefully everybody does. Okay. Mr. Hubbard says, if you find finance faltering, you will discover immediately why. If you realize, see, now even Mr. Hubbard's giving you a tip off that this is the time to realize this. If you realize that the financial system is a communications system and that communications systems are the background of what you are doing.
Wow.
You get that, you've got it licked. Okay, if you really get that, if you realize that, and you say, well, that's pretty obvious. First of all, I'm gonna make this a little demo. Okay, if I say hi to you, okay, communication, the formula of communication, the simple formula. There's expanded formulas, but is cause, distance, effect. Okay, so I have. I'm a cause point, you're an effect point. And so I say hello to you. I'm passing a particle to you. I'm cause point, you're effect point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if I say hi to you, what tends to happen? What do you do?
I'll go hello back. I'd say something back to you.
Back. One of the interesting things about communication is though the communication formula is cause, distance, effect, right, with a duplication at the effect point of what originated at the cause point, it is more natural and observable that it tends to be two-way.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
If you omit that, if I said hi to you and you said nothing, I'd say what a jerk or something like that, right? It naturally lends itself to being a two-way thing, right? Now let's take finance. Okay, let's take economics. If I'm selling you this steel ball, right? So this goes cause, distance, effect. You receive that.
Yep.
You follow? That is the same thing. It's a communication formula. I could give you a shave. It's the same thing. I'm cause point, you're effect point, right? So cause, distance, effect. I give you a shave. Adjust you, whatever it is, or sell you a car. It's all something is moving from cause over a distance to an effect point. Right. That is for sure. If it doesn't happen, there's no service, there's no product, nothing's happening. Okay. Now, what then happens is it comes back. You are cause point now, distance, effect.
Gotcha.
I just demonstrated a fundamental economic transaction. It is a communication cycle.
Wow.
Okay.
Yep.
If you think about it, he's saying, realize this, that the financial system is a communications system, and communications is the background of what you are doing. If you think about that, if you recognize that, what do you do when you're lonely?
Watch TV or read a book or try to call somebody.
Call somebody.
Yeah.
I don't usually think, I don't know, I don't watch much TV, so I don't know if that solves it. But if I'm lonely, I call somebody. Right. I communicate. If the guy's not making any bread, what do you think he ought to do?
Start calling people.
Communicate. Now this seems so easy and fundamental, and yet by survey, not a wise survey, not a survey I've done, but by survey, in depressions, recessions, what do you think is the number one item that's cut from budgets in corporate America?
I know it. Promotion. You talk to clients like, I'm not making it. I got to cut my promotion. Right? It's unbelievable.
They cut communication. So this is such an obvious datum. Is this such an obvious datum? Why do you think that business after business, I know some members of mine who've got wonderful businesses. Suddenly I call their place and they now got an automated system to answer their damn phone. Like, are you telling me how many people listening enjoy talking to a recorded message, or it's a digital WhatsApp? Nobody does. How many of you go, oh my gosh, I've got somebody on the phone. Like, this is awesome. Now, of course, if that person is skilled in communication and helpful and interested and has some fundamentals of communication, well, what are the odds of some kind of finance happening there? You see?
So I love it. Let me just make sure I'm getting it, because so like normally, like you said, if you say hi to me, I'm going to say hi back. When we're talking about business, that hi back is to some degree finances, right? It's like, I'm going to give you money because you just gave me a communication that I felt was worthwhile. And that's, it's what I love about these webinars is, this is just to give you an example. So I consult a lot of different businesses, and like I just had a podiatrist come here for 2 days, and we did a whole thing on communication and on statistics and stuff. And one of the concepts I've found that's out when you see businesses, especially practices, not doing well is exactly what you're talking about. And the way I've represented it is I say, look, there's a party going on. There's this amazing party going on. And you go to the party and you stand in the corner and you don't talk to anybody. Right? And at the end of the next day, I call you up. I go, hey, how was the party? And you go, it was okay. Or you go to the same party and you stand there and you go, hey, I'm Dan Margolin, or I'm Quentin Strube. Nice to meet you. What's your name? How'd you? Okay. And I call you the next day and I go, how's the party? And you go, awesome party, man. That was some party. But what changed? It was the same damn party, right? It was just that you changed. And it's really what you're saying here is that to increase your finance, you've got to increase your communication.
That's right. And there's two, it's a function of communication, always. Always. I'm not saying sometimes, always. Right?
Why do you think people don't inherently do, or maybe they do, some do, but why do you think, because it's so simple, but it's so brilliant and it's so powerful, why does it drop out so quickly? Why wouldn't, like when you're saying this, I'm sure everybody's having an aha moment right now where they're like, oh my God, but why do you think people would drop their promotion, their communication line out at the very first hint of a financial problem?
Well, one communicates as much as one is alive. Okay. So it's an index of being alive is how much a person communicates. I'll just read you something from here from Ron. He says, if a person were as alive as he gave and received communication, then an organization could be considered as alive as it gave and received pieces of mail. It's that simple. So he's talking about mail. This was written in 1964. It would also, of course, relate to phone calls. It would relate to electronic mail. But a person is as alive as he can communicate, or pardon me, his index of how alive he is how much communication is occurring, real communication. And I think you are witnessing in our society a general decline in the level of communication, because people don't understand it. They don't understand the formula of it. They're not trained in it. No one teaches it in school. It's not like says, hey, cause, distance, effect. Hey, you need to learn how to sit in front of somebody and be able to be there and communicate. No one's training that. That gets trained in our organization, so we kind of take it for granted. But that's not being trained out there. And instead, you're using these stupid, devices, and they're calling that communication. But it's been.
I mean, let me just say, it's almost trained out of them because, my daughter, where she goes to school, they have a rule where at recess, you're not allowed to talk to other students. You're not allowed to hug them. There's a whole, it's almost like this kind of crazy, restriction,
No, but that's true. And, and drugs, the predominance of drugs, these things lower awareness. If you're going to lower awareness, you're going to lower levels of communication. In my youth, when I would get high, I remember being in these, social situations where I felt like we were all in this incredible communication, and then after I got into Scientology and, I stopped all that stuff right away, my friends would still smoke up or they'd still drink. I'd be sitting there in the party and I'd be watching these guys and going, hey man, these guys aren't communicating at all.
Wow.
They think they are, but they're in their own universe. They're actually not in communication. So yeah, with television and the internet and all this other jazz, I think communication in general is decaying horribly, which for the membership is a huge advantage. I don't want to promote it. It's like, obviously we want that situation to change, but boy, oh boy, if you're a wise member, anyone will tell you that whether they promote that they're a Scientologist or not, they're in their environment. People go, what is it about you? There are things that are observed about us because we have those basic communication skills. That's what really sets us apart more than anything else, And so that gives us such an income potential. That's why I say, it's not that hard. Hey, look at, why don't you call your own office and see how your phone is answered? Quite often, people put on reception the employee who couldn't make it on any other position. So, oh, really? Why don't you just put a big sign on your front door saying, we're turning away income today, right? It's like, please don't bring your business here. You know, there's two things you can influence with communication: quantity and quality. And Hubbard goes over again and again, you have to emphasize quantity first, because people will go crazy on quality. But you can influence communication and increase your income through those two things. You can either increase your quantity of communication or your quality of communication. But ideally, you do quantity first and then quality. But quality, okay, call my office. How's my phone answered? You know, is it answered? You know, how many rings does it take? You know, how annoying is this? Like, this is something that every member can do. And you improve that one thing, you're going to make more money.
Quinn, I just had a real cognition, right? So I was looking, actually last week, we were going back over years of stats and trying to sort of debug an area, which was the promo line. We were trying to figure out what, like, there were weeks that we had, especially last year, that were so high we've never, like, it was one of those kind of stellar kind of things. And we've seen those sort of sporadic jumps. And, you know, I've looked at, is it Google? And we were looking at automated systems, right? Because for whatever reason, we're looking at what are our automated systems, automated phone calls, all those kind of things. And when I put those to the side, what stood out was actually when we were doing live communication, we were doing health screenings. I was going out meeting people, all those kind of things, or my staff was going out. Those were the things. And we actually literally just had that recognition. And now that you're saying it, I'm like, oh my God, it was really the live communication that was at the heart of everything. You know, all the other things were great. I mean, we do have automated systems, but thank you for that, sir.
Oh yeah. I mean, automated or not, whether it's your, it's your digital marketing campaign or your screenings, I'm still an advocate through my experience of working with the members for the last decade, since digital marketing has really become the thing. It does not replace public speaking, screenings.
But you see, that's what I got fooled. That's what you just said.
No, you gotta watch that. And that probably relates to quality of communication. I mean, I remember, oh my gosh, the first time we started doing a digital campaign for public seminars, we would get like 10, 15 guys through the sweat of our brow, referrals, handouts, this kind of jazz. And we would get 10 or 15 registered online. Most times, none of the guys who registered online showed up.
Wow.
All the guys anyway, I'm not saying this to throw digital marketing under the bus by any means. I'm looking into it more myself and getting better and better at it. But by George, don't count on that exclusively. And furthermore, another thing that I want to say, because you brought it to mind, measure your communication, measure your outflow. I don't care what it is. Okay, I had a realtor measure the number of contacts she made at parties. You were talking about parties earlier. That was her successful outflow action, and she would never staticize it, and she would never graph it. Members tend to graph inflow 6 ways to Sunday. Like, I look at a member's, I got income graphed, I got visits graphed, I got income from cash graphed, I got income from, insurance graphed, I got all this stuff graphed on inflow. Okay, let me see your bulk mail out. My what? Your bulk mail out, like, what's that? It's like the total amount of mail. Oh yeah, no, we keep a statistic on that. Oh yeah, okay, let me see it. Well, we don't graph it. It's in a logbook somewhere. Hey, Shirley, do you have that? And it's like this. If inflow is proportional to outflow, it's not equal to outflow, by the way. That's not the data. It's proportional though.
Right.
If you're not going to outflow, you're not going to get any inflow. So if you want to be cause over inflow, what better you monitor?
Right. It's a causative stat. I mean, it's something that you've got to look at and go, a new patient's coming in, you're the effect of it, right? Because, okay, 5 came in or 50 came in or 10 came in, but what did you send out that's going to control that is really what you're talking about.
I invite your listeners to write down on a piece of paper the statistics that you're monitoring, the ones that you're graphing, okay, because I do this with my guys in seminars and stuff like that. And they make a list, and I say, okay, good. Beside that list of statistics, write them in a column. I want you to write in if it measures an inflow and out if it measures an outflow. And it's hilarious, you know, because they all do it, and they're all this big sort of missed withhold phenomenon. Everybody's kind of like, you know, looking a little sheepish. I said, okay, what did you discover? I said, well, we only are keeping, you know, one outflow statistic, monitoring one outflow statistic, and about a dozen inflow statistics. I'm going to be cautious about saying this, but I did this once as a consultant, just as an experiment. I'm not advocating this. Don't do this. Don't try this at home. But I had a client, I made him not keep any inflow stats for a month and only keep outflow stats just to see what would happen. And he boomed. He boomed up. We just said, just run your conditions only on your outflow. Just run outflow. I just did it as pretty much as an experiment. And, you know, it's just, we are not, there's an LRH policy letter called outflow. I didn't mark it here, but he says it's holier, more moral, and more remunerative than inflow. It is your first priority. And yet when people are having difficulty with their finance, the first thing they look at is the mailbox. Where are those checks? What have we got out there that we can get in here? And it's like, yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't have due respect and regard for that, but you should be putting 10 times more attention on outflow.
Quinn, I totally got that. So at that communication point of the cause point, what you're doing is you're shifting their viewpoint from being the effect point where, hey, how many new people came in, to, hey, cause point, how much communication did we send out? Powerful, very powerful. Honestly, I hope the people that are listening to this webinar are recognizing the power in this stuff. Just even this whole webinar series, we're talking to like the top experts in the world. You're getting information that you get nowhere else, honestly. And to have Mr. Strube here and talking about Mr. Hubbard's work in this light, where we can actually take it and apply it. This is like earth-shattering. This is some seriously impressive information. Quentin, thank you, sir. Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to put the like ding there, because this should be lights going off big time.
Yeah, well, I sure hope so. All right, so I'm going to go over a couple of very easy ways to increase outflow, quantity and quality of. I'm just going to cover two of them. There's a lot of different ways, but I'm going to cover a couple of them that are probably of senior most important and the easiest ones to do. I mean, look, even promotion, every promotion is communication, you know, a business card, what have you. That's all communication. It's all outflow. So, you know, it goes without saying that, you know, one should be consistent in one's outflow of promotion and so on. But there's a couple of things I want to just emphasize here. I don't know how much more time we have, but I'm just going to go right into this. This is gross income senior data. It's page 486, OEC volume 0. Ron says, the size, not the quality, of an org's mailing list and the number of mailings and letters to it determines the gross income of an org. Determines the gross income of an organization. So in order to understand this, there's a couple of words here that I want to make sure are very clear to the listeners. One is, he uses the term org's mailing list, O-R-G, short for organization, apostrophe S, mailing list. Now, that apostrophe S indicates what?
Belonging to.
Yeah, belongs to the organization. If you're renting a mailing list, if you're purchasing a mailing list, is that your mailing list really? Right?
Right.
It's not the organization's mailing list. The organization's mailing list is the list of identities of individuals or organizations that have actually purchased something from your company or organization. That's your mailing list, and that is one of the most valuable commodities you have in terms of handling your income. Okay, that is gold. Just to give you some, and you can probably validate this, Dan, because I about 2 or 3 years ago, I wrote a little tutorial for my members, and I sent it out. It had gotten back to me that there were, this is particularly in the dental profession, there were gurus out there advocating, yes, you should purge your list. Purge your list. After, I think it was like 12 months or 18 months or something ridiculous, like not even 2 years.
But I don't mean to, I got to tell you this. Years ago, I got called in by a podiatrist that had bought a practice several years earlier. It just so happened I knew the guy that sold the practice to this gentleman. And I knew years ago I had been in that practice, there were thousands and thousands of charts. Just that. And anyway, this gentleman calls me up. He says, Dan, I'm not doing well. Could you come to my office and help me out? So I go there, and all the charts that had been there years before are gone. They're gone. And I said, yeah. So I said, well, when did you buy the practice? And he said 3 years ago. And I said, I don't know if you know this, but I actually knew Dr. Wolf was the guy that owned the practice originally, and he had thousands and thousands of charts here. He'd been here 20 years. Where are all those charts? And he said, you know what? When I bought the practice, it was such a mess with all those charts. I just threw them in the basement. And I said, did you keep the addresses? No. And I looked at him. I said, what do you think you bought? You know, do you think you bought that chair or that instrument? You bought those communication lines, and you just took those lines and threw them in the basement. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's absolutely.
Well, that's a great example. It saves me having to give the example, but I could give you dozens, hundreds probably of examples of the lack of importance given to the organization's mailing list. And yet, this is the gross income senior datum. Okay, it's like that mailing list, and it's like, oh yeah, no, you know, that was 3 years ago. Their teeth are probably perfect now. I don't know, you know, as far as I know, health deteriorates as people get older, not get better. You know, it's like the need for a doctor or a dentist is going to get higher. And okay, good, the guy moved to California, but his family's still in the area, and a lot of times people move back. It's like you never take them off your mailing list unless they ask to come off or unless they, you know, pass away. But other than that, you keep them on your mailing list. I've got a dentist in Atlanta who has people, he has a map in his office with arrows, and I think it's strings he uses, but there's pins for where his patients come from all over the country. They fly to Atlanta.
Wow.
Fly to Atlanta to get their work done by this guy because they've known him, they trust him, and he enlightens them correctly and uses his mailing list correctly. So, you know, don't ever take anybody off your list. That's just, I don't even want to say how it could possibly be intuitive to do that, but people do it. And the conventional wisdom out there, unfortunately, it's not respected. Guys have boxes and boxes of invoices that they never enter them into their computer. They never bother to promote them. So that's when I say this is easy. This is easy. Just keep your mailing list and send some communication out to it. Now, the other definition I want to clear is the word letters, and that is a common misunderstood amongst the members. I said, let me look at your letters out. Oh, this doesn't look too bad, 200 or 300 letters out. Yeah, no, we never let the letters go down. Okay, good. Yeah, these are personal letters. Oh yeah, they're personal letters. That's awesome. I can't understand why you're having trouble with your income. Can I see some of these letters? What do you think they show me?
Postcards or pre-done
letters. They show me form letters. Okay. Now, just to put this at rest once and for all, okay, Mr. Hubbard says, form letters are foolish as one can't do a form to cover individual wants. The want is individual. Page 626, purple volume, OEC volume 2. I quote, form letters are foolish. They think they're personal letters because they personalize them. What does that mean? They put the guy's first name on it. It's like, that's a form letter. It's not a personal letter. When he says the size, not the quality of an org's mailing list and the number of mailings and letters to it determines the gross income of an org, I can assure you he's not talking about form letters. He's talking about personal letters.
Wow.
Okay?
Yep.
So now, in the OEC volumes, 2 of the longest policy letters I've ever seen written by Mr. Hubbard are written on how to write a letter.
Wow.
2. And you can look them up. It's OEC volume 2. One's called Modern Procurement Letters. The other one's called the Letter Registrar Hat or Letter Edge Hat. Read them. There's a technology on how to write a letter. And it's also, incidentally, he doesn't just say letters. He also says, don't violate this first premise. Any letters or phone calls are better than no letters or phone calls. Remember, he's emphasizing quantity first. You know, don't go all weird on it. Just start putting people on the phones, start having people write personal letters, whether they're written according to the technology that he's developed on it or not, get some stuff out there. The next stable datum is the volume of the income of an org is in direct proportion to the number of phone calls and letters of an org. It has nothing to do with quality. So,
I guess,
he's also bringing in phone calls. But so, all right. So if that's true, what better you keep track of statistically?
We talked about this probably about 2 years ago, and I took your advice. And what we did is we took our medical assistants and started putting them on the phones. Actually, and to this day. So last week we did, I think, 248 phone calls, that were actual phone calls where they got to talk to people. And we booked 17 people from that. So that's pretty good. The person sat there for, whatever it was, a day and a half or whatever it was, maybe 2 days. And we got 17 people out of it. So it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can do it to you should do it to your mailing list. That's priority. But don't be afraid to cold call. I have a friend of mine, a member, an accountant, who has 2 people on the phone full time, just doing outflow, cold call into business to business, and he's doing extremely well. So well, he doesn't really need to tell anybody his secrets sometimes, but he is doing really, really well. And he's just put a couple of guys on the phones, just making phone calls. Good old cold calling, which we has been maligned over the years. Outflow, and quantify it. Staticize it, and emphasize, of course, communication to your own mailing list as a priority, but don't neglect not to say, and I have turned many businesses around with letters only, letters and newsletters, but letters alone, personal letters. I had a client one time who would do nothing. I told him nothing. Everything was like, no, I wouldn't do that. No, I would never do a public talk. No, I'd never ask for a referral. No, I'd never, run an ad. No, I would never do this. Would you write a letter to your patients? Yeah, I would do that. Good. So why didn't you write 10 letters to your patients this week? He did that. And I called him next week and said, did you write your 10 letters? Yeah. Okay, good. Write 15. I didn't even ask him how it was going. He was such an unpleasant person that all I did was say, did you write your letters? Did you write your letters? He was, a hard case that was flipped to me because no other consultant could handle it. And only I got him to do for 6 months until his contract. But after about 3 months of this, I asked him, hey, how's it going? He said, I'm so busy. I barely have time to write my letters. But anyways, that's the only thing I taught him. And then after the contract was over, I let him go. I didn't want to re-sign him, but he's probably still writing to this day. And that was 23 years ago. So I've turned business around with this only. Okay.
Wow.
The other thing that I want to emphasize as a very simple, how much more time do we have, Dan?
We probably have about 5 minutes.
Okay. So as you know, at one time I was writing and sending out assignments. I need to start doing it again, called Try This at Home. I would send out little study assignments for the members that they could read and apply very easily. And I've done some really fancy ones that I thought for sure would change the world. And I'd send them out. I sent out one time called how to, you may remember this, how to 5X your income or something like that. And I just want to give this last example because it's just so hilarious how simple, how easy it is to raise income. But I said, how do you increase your income by 500%? Of course, everybody read it. And all I did was I had them go through their office with a clipboard and call into the office, go through the office, and make with the eyes of somebody who had not been in the office before, and just make a little checklist of things they could do to make the place look better, and make it cleaner, make it more attractive. Okay, and it's based on a reference called "Cleanliness of Quarters and Staff Improve Our Image." It's page 139 of OEC Volume 0. This guy here. Okay, and he says, a clean set of quarters and a neat, professional-looking staff can increase your income by about 500%. So I wrote this little one-page assignment. I sent it out there. I said, everybody, and I got more response on that. I had more guys writing in, calling in. Yeah, we read that. We looked at our office and said, boy, we need a coat of paint. These plants are dead. Let's get rid of these. And they just pretty up their office. How many guys came back and said that their income was shooting into affluence based on that one thing alone? And think about that. That's quality of communication. Your office And I have guys who tell me, oh, nobody ever comes by my office. Why would I do that? I say, well, now you know why they never come by your office, right? Like a guy, maybe no, I don't care what kind of business you're in. If you spend an afternoon or a day cleaning the place up, getting it organized, whether your public come to your office or not, if you just do that, improve your image, also look at your letterhead, look at the way people are answering your phone, just look at the image that you're putting out there and improve that, you're going to increase your income. Can't help but do it.
Quinn, I got to tell you, 2 years ago, I got called in by one of the top podiatrists in the country. I don't want to tell you who he is, but he's in Georgia. But so I flew out there, and he's an older gentleman, right? He literally invented probably 80% of the surgical procedures that we knew. And I have so much respect for him and stuff. So I go to his office, and I walk in, and the office honestly just looked horrible. It looked like he hadn't painted the place. The furniture was old. Anyway, I go in and I sit down, and he's doing work. He's doing surgery. I look around a little bit, and he comes out maybe a couple hours later. I just flown out there, and he goes, Dan, I'm a little bit tired, and I just don't have the time to see. Maybe you could hang out, and we'll see you tomorrow. And I said, that'd be great, but let's just do one thing. And I walked him to his front room. I go, I want you to come in as if you were a patient that had never seen this place, but only heard of the great, I don't want to say his name, and he said, all right. And he walks through the door, and he comes in, and I sit with him. I go, so what'd you think? He goes, it was a little messy. I go, let's be real honest. And he goes, you know what? It looked horrible, didn't it? I go, it looked so bad. Anyway, we just had him redo his waiting room. His stats went through the roof to the point that he loves me. I mean, anybody that talks to him now, you got to go to Dan. You got to go to Dan. But it's just a powerful, powerful concept. And I think sometimes you live in an environment, you don't see it anymore, right? You have to look at it with fresh eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, but and it makes me. It's funny because as a consultant, as a COYs, it makes you feel almost like you're cheating. It's just so, like I say, it's so easy. This is not rocket science. You clean the place up, okay, and watch your income go up. Start writing some letters to your people, watch your stats go up. Start keeping track of your outflow, watch your stats go up. Put your staff through a communication course. I think I should make a final bid for this. There's no easier and more surefire way of getting your income to go up than to put all your staff through the improving business through communication. One of the things we encourage the members to do, obviously it's part of the model of admin know-how, but they should put in company training. Not training your employees on, if you did nothing but train them on communication, your income would go up significantly. If you didn't teach them anything else, teach them about communication, teach them about ARC, and you're going to watch your income go up. Just ask yourself, if there's two businesses on the same street selling the same product, basically same prices, but one has a high communication level, the other has a low communication level, which business are you going to use? Which one are you going to hire and give money to, give attention units to? So it all comes back to that. If you realize that the financial system is a communication system, and communication is the background of what you were doing, if you really realize that, and you just think with that, there's no way you can have difficulty with financing again after that.
Quinn, for the wise members that aren't maybe so familiar with the model of admin know-how or how to put that in, or how would they proceed to do that? In other words, how would they get in touch? Like, how would they? That's
a good question, actually. Every member is sent the model of admin know-how workbook, right? I was just in I have a wonderful member. She's going to be featured on the Scientology Network. Got an engineering business, an incredible company, and she's an incredible woman. She just joined staff, actually, in the Orlando Church of Scientology. A brilliant woman. And I was in there, and they were running into, I was helping her transition out of her business, and we were covering some of the basics. And it came up that there were a few stresses on the finance lines and stuff like that. I'm not going to go into the details. But I did say, it's all covered in the model of admin know-how workbook. So she then, the other people, her executives were in the room, right? And they said, model admin know-how workbook. And she looked at me and she smiled and she said, I think they're in the bottom closet. So anyway, so we go in there and there they are. There's three of them, side by side, carefully stowed in the bottom credenza, Anyway, so we had enough. We gave everybody one, and there's a whole section there on how to implement the Hubbard finance system, which, look, if you're having, she's got a great business and it does very good turnover, but you still need to know, you still need to implement proper financial planning and so on, it makes your life so much easier. So she took that chapter. They're all taking that, they're implementing that, needless to say. And of course, it makes a huge difference. And it's right there in the workbook. So I'd say the first place to start is just grab your workbook and start on page 1, and then when you're done with page 1, turn the page over and there's another one. It's numbered. It's all numbered. It says 2, page 2. Start on that page and then do whatever it says, read whatever it says, and then go to the next one. Again, it's numbered 3, and just at 2 page, I think it's 264 pages. By the end, you've got a pretty good business going. So that's your workbook. You can also call our office, 212-581-5757. Talk to Bronwyn, my deputy. Talk to me. I'm not usually there, but most people have my cell phone number now, and just call me and your local chapter. There's effective management associations pretty much almost everywhere now. I mean, almost all my members are within 100 miles at least of their local chapter of the Effective Management Association. Hook up with your local chapter. So, good question to ask. Probably we should promote it more, how you can actually get started. But call us, call your local chapter, grab your workbook and get started.
Mr. Quinstrew, thank you so much for joining us, sir. Really appreciate that. Was awesome. Really appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure.
That brings us to the close of another Fast Track training. I hope you enjoyed it. More importantly, I hope you learned some fundamentals that you can apply to your own business so that you can be the great success, and we'll interview you on our show one of these days. Now, the next step, if you're interested, I'd love to do a free practice analysis with you, pre-business analysis. You can email me at dan@effectivemanagement.net and send the request. We'll be happy to do that for you. Mr. Quinton Strube, again, thank you so much, sir, and we'll see you in about 2 weeks. Bye-bye now.
Thanks.